Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about Ukraine. I'm going to make the argument that there's no such place anymore, anyway. And then Trump's making some noise. We'll chat about his 2024 aspirations. Let's talk. Hi, Garland here, and so let's talk about Ukraine. You know, when you talk about one of the things that, the argument, the US, the Biden team, the neocons, their argument about Ukraine being an independent sovereign nation. Well, look, we could start off by doing this. Let's start off by just making the argument that it wasn't an independent sovereign nation when the war started, but then we'll go to now. Well, clearly, most of you all know the history. 2014, the United States overthrows the government. So it's hard to argue that it's an independent sovereign nation when the US overthrew the government. It was at that point, it was a client state. It was a tool. It was, sadly, unfortunately for the Ukrainian people, it was a tool. It was an experiment ground. The US had 46 bio research labs. Would they do that? Did they do that in the US? No, they couldn't get away with it in the US. The US started this organization called NABU. Look it up. The National Anti-Corruption Bureau. It was the FBI, Jim Comey. What the hell are they doing? They sent Jim Comey and the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigations. So the US overthrows Ukraine, takes over the government. Joe Biden was basically in charge of the Ukraine project. He was basically the governor, as the Brits would call him back in the day, the viceroy in charge of this client state. And they immediately start this organization called NABU. So if Ukraine is an independent state, what the hell is the FBI doing there? The FBI is in Ukraine with their own branch, working with the Ukrainians, looking for corruption, but for some reason they couldn't find any corruption. You couldn't find that the fact that Joe Biden's son was there making money hand over foot for doing nothing. They didn't find that corruption. They didn't find the fact that Cofer Black, former CIA assistant director, he was over there on the board with of Burisma. They couldn't find that. Amos Hochstein, he leaves the Obama administration, goes over there and gets on the board of Naftogaz, which is their state gas company, state-owned gas company. They couldn't find all of that. The government of Ukraine suddenly gets overthrown, and all of these people from the US, all of these leaders and their kids suddenly show up in Ukraine and start making a fortune. And for some reason, and then the FBI shows up. The U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation opens a branch in Ukraine. Doesn't seem to make sense, does it? If it's an independent and sovereign nation, what do they need? They'd have their own investigative units, right? No. Then Joe Biden, it came out and said himself. He said, "Look, I wanted them to fire the equivalent of their attorney general. I wanted them to fire their prosecutor, who just happened to be looking into his son's the same company that his son was working for." And he said in the public, "I told him we got $1 billion loan. You don't fire him, no billion." They fired him, and I want the new guy in. And here's something you probably might not know. At the time that happened, so Joe Biden says, "Fire this prosecutor." This is the prosecutor that's investigating the company that's paying his son. They replaced him with another prosecutor, but the Rada, the Ukrainian Rada, which is the equivalent of their Congress, had to change the laws because the guy that Biden chose to be their new prosecutor, which is the equivalent of their attorney general, he wasn't a lawyer. So Biden's like, fire that guy that's investigating my son, put this new guy in. Oh, by the way, you got to change the law because he ain't even a lawyer. How you going to be the equivalent of attorney general and you ain't a lawyer? Because you're not, because you're a puppet. So at any rate, so the U.S. does that. Now, let's move forward to now. I mean, it's clear. They immediately start began preparing for war with Russia. In fact, they kind of went to war and lost and got surrounded, and they had to come up with the Minsk Accords. But at any rate, so the U.S. is in there. The U.S. is preparing for the last 8 years. The U.S. has been preparing Ukraine to go to war with Russia. They get what they finally want. They get the war with Russia. Now, Ukraine is supposedly a sovereign nation, right? But here's what we know. They came up, they worked with the Russians a month after the war started, and they came up with a deal, right? They came up with a truce. They came up with an agreement, whatever you want to call it. And the U.S., Boris Johnson and his people went in and killed it. Well, if they're sovereign, somebody from the outside can't come in. And clearly, let's face it, everybody knows Boris Johnson is an extension, that whoever is the prime minister of the UK is an extension of the US empire, the US UK empire. So the US UK empire goes in and kills it, and they're an independent sovereign nation. So let's go further. The people, they've got their own military that the US has built up. That military gets wiped out at some point, really, really wiped out. The equipment's wiped out, all kind of things are wiped out, right? So the US replaces it. They replace the military equipment. They replace all kinds of stuff. So this goes on. The Ukraine's economy gets destroyed. Now the US replaces their economy. I mean, literally replaces their economy. At this point, Ukraine has lost 20% at least of their country, right? Russia has said that we tried to bargain with you for the Donbass region, and you don't want to bargain, we'll take it. So they're taking it, and it's never going back. And they're going to take, I think, considerable amount more. It's never going back. But they've taken a huge portion of it. Whenever anyone says, you should, in fact, let me say this. The Chinese recently came up with a peace plan. And they delivered that peace plan apparently to Russia and Ukraine. And the word was Ukraine looked at it as if they were a real country. And I think Hungary looked at it, said that's good. There were some people looking at that peace plan saying that's something we can work with. And the U.S. said no. Now, if Ukraine is truly a country, then the U.S. wouldn't have the authority to nix their peace plan. But wait a minute. There's more to it than that. So the U.S. currently, Ukraine's at war, right? The U.S. is providing or facilitating the provision of all of their weaponry, all of their ammunition for their weaponry, providing them with the intelligence and targeting for their weaponry. Facilitating the movement of mercenaries when they're running out of soldiers, all these Polish mercenaries, all these other mercenaries. So the U.S. is providing, and let's keep going. The U.S. now is paying the salaries of the politicians in Ukraine. The U.S. is paying the pensions of the civilians in Ukraine. The U.S. is paying the salaries of the soldiers of Ukraine. The U.S. is paying when the soldiers die and their families get X amount of money. The U.S. is paying that. So Ukraine's an individual independent sovereign country that the U.S. is providing the weapons for. Some of the people, the ammunition, the salaries for the soldiers, the salaries for the politicians. The U.S. pays their rata, the U.S. pays their salary. Zelensky, U.S. pays his salary. Paying for pensions, literally putting money in the hands of the Ukrainian people. Paying for their health care, paying for their economy is no more. So this is an independent country, right? But they don't pay for anything. They have no military left. The U.S. completely floats their military, their ammunition, their hardware, everything. They have no budget. They have no economy. The U.S. pays every bill, everything for the citizens, they have nothing that would lead you to believe it's a country. If we're going to call it a nation has something. Do they have a military? No, they don't. They don't have a military that's paid for everything by the U.S. Do they have an economy? No, they don't. Everything's paid for by the US. Do they have the independence to make decisions about their military? We are given false information to imply that they do, but in reality, the US is targeting. And what do we hear? The US says, they say, we want to strike deeper in Russia. The US says, nah, you can't do that. Or yes, you can do that. Nah, we'll give you equipment to strike deeper. Nah, but you can only use it this far. We'll give you this equipment, but you can only use it for that. They came out and said the U.S. is providing all of our targeting for our long-range equipment, right? So the U.S. tries to pretend as though the Ukrainians have some level of independence, but let's face it. How do they have independence if the U.S. is providing the weapons and the ammunition, some of the soldiers, the uniforms, paying the soldiers, paying the Congress, Rada, paying Zelensky, paying every teacher, every fireman, every retired person who's getting a pension? The U.S. pays all of that. So in reality, how can Ukraine have any independence if the U.S. is paying all of that? Which simply means this: Ukraine, people were asking, let me put it another way. People were asking, will Ukraine cease to exist as a country? When Russia gets finished with it, what will be left? Will there be Ukraine? There is no Ukraine now. There's nothing left. If you're going to talk about Ukraine, you have to talk about it as, in order for it to be a nation, there has to be some level of independence. It's the 51st state. It is the equivalent of the 51st state, but even more so, because no state gets the kind of money, could ever get the kind of money that Ukraine gets. Look at Ohio. They get plane crash. The towns are filled with ungodly chemical sludge, and they get nothing. All the money goes to Ukraine. Why? Because it is a tool that is far more important. The other part, it is an adopted land. It is an adopted tool, foreign policy tool that's far more important to the ruling elite class than the actual constituents, than the actual voters. Think about it. What is it? I've heard it say this. How do you spell commitment? M-O-N-E-Y. So if you want to know where somebody's commitment is, you see where they spend their money, right? Okay. We just had another derailment today in Ohio. You hear the U.S. saying we got to do something about these train problems. Well, man, we got to have a super fund cleanup. The EPA's got to be out to Ohio, and we got to look all over the place. We got to turn over every rock. We got to see if there's problems. We got to do everything we can to clean up that situation. We have to move these people. We have to test the air. We have to get them new homes. We have to do you hear any of that stuff? They ain't spending a dime on that. Joe Biden goes on and says, hey, we've got a Ukraine. We got to stand up for them. Why? Because from their perspective, the only thing that matters to the ruling elite is this. They got a machine. They've got an economic machine, and that economic machine is predatory. In order for that economic machine to work, they have to be able to prey on other countries. They have to be able to prey. They have to be able to have other countries under their thumb, or that economic machine doesn't work. They're used to getting their lithium, their gold, their uranium from Africa, from South America, wherever, right? They're used to using and abusing these countries, stealing their stuff, overthrowing their governments, putting in puppets, stealing their resources, and then telling you these countries are poor because they're genetically, socially, culturally inferior to us. In reality, they're robbing them blind. And that's the predatory system that they've created, right? So they stay rich. And the system has gotten to the point now where it's running out of necks to bite as a vampire out there, and now it's preying on its own people. We've got a system now in the United States that preys on its own. Think about this. Go around the world and find me another country that does what we do with our students. You go to college in most countries, and they see that as a way to make their kids smarter. They see that as a way to improve the overall education of their country, and a way to we've got more engineers, we've got more whatever, and now we can do more as a country, right? In a predatory system like the US, you know what they see their kids as? Cha-ching. Uh-oh, what are we going to do with the kids? They're on these college campuses trying to get the kids to take out credit cards. They're giving them, here, take this credit card. Why? Because the kid doesn't know anything about it. You ain't got to pay till you get out of college. Now the kid gets out of college, they got a house payment, no house. Kid gets out of college, he didn't know. Now all the kids got it in their mind. Well, I'll take student loans and I'll go to school, because they don't know anything. They don't understand that a loan is a claim on future earnings, and they don't see any other option. So what the US did, I remember when it was happening. I remember right here in Maryland when the cost of, in 1 year, the cost of going to college went up 64%. So what they did was this: they dramatically increased the cost of going to college first, to the point where no middle class or lower class person could afford to go to college. Only the upper class could go, right? It's like the rest of our society, buying homes, buying everything. They increase the price where people can't buy stuff outright, and then they say, "Well, we'll just lend you the money to do it." But that's a claim on future earnings. So now most middle class, lower class kids, whatever, some upper class kids cannot afford, could no way they could afford to go to college. Forget it. It costs too much. But they make it easy. That's okay. Here you go. Fill this paperwork out. You'll get a loan. No credit necessary, no nothing. You're a kid, you'll get a loan. You get that loan, and they got you for the rest of their lives. So this is a predatory system that has been preying around the world, and now it's preying on our own kids. Now, and there's some discussion now about getting rid of the student loans. The truth of the matter is, even if it's in the Supreme Court now, there's a case talking about whether or not the government has the authority currently to forgive student loans. In my opinion, it should. It's just predatory system. But here's the problem: what good's it going to do? You're going to one little batch of kids. You're going to get rid of their student loans. One little batch of kids. Meanwhile, you're still bringing them into the system. You're giving away student loans. Generation after generation of 18 and 19-year-olds are going to come out of there with $100, $200, $250,000 in student loans. And when they get out of, they started working, and they're like, okay, great. Now you got to pay back your student loans. And the kids, how much? $1,100 a month. Like, what? I didn't know it was going to be that much. I don't know. Well, too bad. And now they can't afford to do anything. They can't afford to buy a house or anything. So this system is predatory. So it needs more victims. It's a parasitical. It needs more hosts. And we're the hosts. I mean, we're the hosts now. We are the hosts. So this system is looking at the world saying, man, we got problems because Russia and China and these other countries are rising, and they're doing deals with Africa or Russia, Belt and Road, stuff like that. That ain't what we do. We overthrow their country and we steal their stuff. Now, Africa and Russia is going and giving them different kind of options. That's problematic for us. We're not going to be able to prey on those people. It's getting harder and harder to prey on these other countries. And now this neoliberal system is turning inward. It's preying on our own people, but our own people, our system's falling apart, and it doesn't know what to do. And all it knows how to do is strike out and try to use violence. Well, we'll just knock China down. Think about this. What the US's plan is. Think about how absurd this is. Russia and China are rising powers. Russia is rising because it has a lot of commodities to sell. It's selling its commodities. It's being fairly smart with its money. It's not like the US, $31 trillion in debt. It's debt to GDP ratio. Forget GDP. That's a construct from Wall Street and the City of London. It means nothing. It means, how much you can buy, not how much you can make, not how much you can produce. That's how you judge an economy, by how much you can make, what you can produce, not what you can buy. But at any rate, if you want to just use debt to GDP ratio, its debt to GDP ratio is very, very reasonable, one of the lowest in the world, where the US is, ours is, and all these Western nations are through the roof. So we're up to our ears in debt. Russia and China aren't. Russia and China are doing things the way they want to do them, and they're rising. And the US's plan, now think about this, is to destroy their country. We're saying we've got to sanction Russia and impoverish Russia. What about China? We've got to stop China. They're rising. They're a threat to us. What are they doing? And Tony Blinken will tell you, they're a threat to the rules-based order. They're building a bigger Navy like us. They're building a big Navy. That's a problem. It isn't a problem for them. They don't have a right to build a navy as big as they want to. If they've got the money, if I got the money to buy a boat, what are you going to do? You got a 22-foot boat and you live next door to me, and your 22-foot boat is on your pier, and next to mine is my pier, and I get a 22.5-foot boat. Are you going to look over there and say, oh, Garland Nixon's got a 22.5-foot boat? He's a threat. He's a problem. I'm going to go drill a hole in his boat and sink it. I'm going to go light a fire. I'm going to go try to make sure he loses his job so he can't buy. His boat's bigger than mine. He's a threat to this order that I have the biggest boat on the creek. That's basically what we're looking at. We're looking at people who are saying, think about what they're trying to do, what Biden and his neocons are trying to do. They're trying to stop countries that are having economic success from being successful economically. That's it. China and Russia's problem, what they're doing wrong, what they're angering the neocons are, they're having economic success. They're being, and so there's all these excuses. Well, they're not standing up for this group or this minority or whatever. It's lies. Come on, look at the U.S.'s. I always say this. You want to know what the U.S. cares about minorities and human rights? Go to a Native American. Go to what do you call it? Where the Native Americans live. Check that out. You want to see what the U.S. cares about it? They're living in poverty with no water, no nothing. It's a disgrace what the U.S. does with the Native Americans. They don't have decent housing. They don't have water. They don't have decent schools. They live in absolute dire third world poverty oftentimes on their reservations. It's unexcusable. The U.S. has a responsibility to take care of the Native Americans, at least bring them up to a reasonable standard. But now, go around the U.S. They ain't the only ones. You'll see the same kind of thing. Go online and look. You'll see homeless camps and tent cities and all these things all over the United States. So we're all getting the same treatment as the Native Americans now. Oh, everybody in America's, starting to suffer in that same fate. So their plan now is, how can we, instead of saying we got to rebuild inside, we got to fix, we got some problems, we got to fix them. It's like if I said, man, I'm gaining weight. And think about this. Guy says, I'm gaining weight and I want to date this pretty girl. And that other guy, he's in shape and he wants to date her. What are you going to do? I'm going to cut his legs off, because she won't want him then, because he won't have any legs. And then, like, I may be heavier and not in the condition I should be in, or I'd like to be in, but I'll be looking better to him because he won't have any legs. So then I'll get the date with the pretty girl. Instead of saying, well, you know what? I'm going to try to do something for myself. I'm going to try to make myself, I'm going to get a haircut. I'm going to work out a little bit, maybe diet or lose a couple pounds. Instead of saying, I'm going to do some things to myself to try to improve myself, to be competitive for whatever this is I am after. No, I'll cut his legs off. That's what the U.S.'s plan is for Russia and China. We're going to cut their legs off. It's the Tanya Harding way of doing things, right? You remember Tanya Harding years ago, or you might have heard the story where there was these two skaters, Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding. And Kerrigan was apparently beating the crap out of Harding every time they skated. So Harding hired some guy to take a friggin' lead pipe and smash her in the knee and injure her so that she could win. That's the U.S. Should we work out a little bit more? Should we get up earlier and exercise? Should we work on our skating routine? Nope. We want to take a lead pipe and we're going to bash Russia and China in the knee, and that way we can keep going. But the problem is this. You're playing whack-a-mole. Iran's got oil. They just found, did you know this? Iran just discovered the second largest lithium reserve in the world. That's why the U.S. is saying we've got to stop Iran. We've got to attack them. They're getting nukes. It ain't got nothing to do with nukes. They got oil. They got gas. They got lithium. They've got very smart people. I don't know if you know it, the Iranians win like all of these math contests that their kids are winning around the year. They're around the world every year. They're doing the STEM stuff, right? They're starting to get technologically advanced. So these countries are working. They're educating their kids. They're working hard to improve their countries and live better as we try to hold them down with sanctions. Russia, China, they're educating their kids. Moscow just announced they're building some new subway thing, right? Like 70 kilometers, a big ring around Moscow, this gigantic public project. Great, wonderful. Now you're going to have a city with like all kinds of new stuff and modern stuff. China, they're building high-speed rail. Our friggin' trains are running right off the rail. They're like building new ones. Yes, we're going to have a new rail system and it's going to be modern and the trains are going to go 400 miles an hour. You can get in this train, pay a couple bucks, you're in the city 400 miles away in an hour. And we can't even, we got like chemical trains just like every other couple days. Ohio's done every other day. There's a train again, like I said, we just had another one in Ohio. Derailment. If you look at the friggin' railroad tracks around here, it looks like a rattlesnake's back, wiggly and all screwed up. No. Why? Because the only thing we can do is we can buy bombers, we can buy F-35s, we can buy things to threaten people, we can all this military hardware rather than put money into America, rather than spend it here. We're going to do a military hardware around the world so that we can go threaten people. So what we're really trying to do, if you think about it, is hold the world back. Think about this. If the United States is not spending the money it needs to improve the educations and to compete with the other countries and to put out all of these kids now that are coming, to have these kids, coming out with degrees in all kind of technology and STEM and all that stuff. So we weren't putting the money for that. Our friggin' schools are falling apart. Everything's falling apart here, right? So what we're saying is we're not going to do that. Our poor kids will come out and all they'll know how to do is play video games all day and work in Pizza Hut because they can't really get a job anywhere else. And if they do, all their money is going to go to student loans. So our kids are screwed, blued, and tattooed. And the countries that actually are educating their kids and they're building things that we can't build, we got to kneecap them. So they can't do that. So what the neocons plan is to kneecap the world. It's to say we're going to build a world that's safe for greedy oligarchs. And all of the money and all the advancement go in the hands of the oligarchs. And any country that tries to advance itself, that tries to educate its kids, that tries to improve itself, we can't have that because that's a threat to us. But why is it a threat to us? Only because we're not trying to improve ourselves. Why is Russia and China a threat to the United States? Because the United States is not on the rise. They're on the rise. We're on the decline. They're passing us. Why are they a threat to the rules-based order? You read it, Blinken will say, yes, China is the only country that has the military and economic wherewithal to challenge the rules-based order. Well, they didn't have it before, did they? They didn't have it 25 years ago. Why do they have it now? They have it because they have improved their economic and military might. Well, if we were doing what maybe they were doing, maybe sending our kids to friggin' school, maybe we'd have improved our economic and military might. And they would be a challenge to the rules-based order. The problem is the rules-based order is a fraud. It's a scam. It's a self-serving racket. It's neoliberalism. So they're only challenging the rule-based order because the rules-based order doesn't work for the masses. It only works for a tiny group of people. And what the U.S. is forced to do is forced to go out and find a country like Ukraine, hollow it out, and think about what they did to Ukraine. They went to Ukraine and they couldn't resist it. That's how these neoliberals are. They couldn't resist. They overthrow the government of Ukraine, right? So now they hollow out Ukraine. What do? Well, we're going to prepare for war with Russia, but that wasn't good enough. Hey, they got money. We like money. Next thing you know, there's Hunter Biden. He's on the border of Burisma. There's Kofor Black. Look him up. He's on the border of Burisma. There's Amos Hochstein. He's on the board of Naftagaz. Next thing you know, they overthrow that country, and those greedy bastards went out there. And before they could do anything, before they could do war with Russia, they had to steal everything that wasn't nailed down. That's the first thing they did with Ukraine. They went in. They overthrew the country and they stole everything that was nailed down. And people said, well, Ukraine's a very corrupt country. Well, that's why it worked perfect for them, because they go in there and there's the oligarchs, very extremely corrupt. And the Biden administration and the Obama administration and the Trump administration, all of them are extremely corrupt. Neoliberalism is inherently corrupt. So when they overthrow a government, the first thing they do is go in there and steal everything they didn't nail down. And they also use that as an excuse to steal from us. So now they say, well, we got to send $100 billion to Ukraine. That money ain't going to Ukraine. It's going to Lockheed Martin. It's going to Raytheon. It's going wherever the hell. And the money that goes to Ukraine is getting filtered. You remember FTX? You think it ain't a scam? They're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine, and Ukraine's buying crypto scam money in a company that like started like 20 days. So FTX started like 20 days after Biden started running for office. So Biden runs for office and boom, there's a boom, FTX shows up. And what do you know? Money's going to Ukraine. And in the midst of a war, they're like, hey, I got a great idea. Yeah, maybe we should invest in crypto. So it's part of the neoliberal scam. It's that circular money. One of the things you want to do is you want to steal from the country. The other thing is you want to use the country so you can launder money. Take that 100 billion, send it there, and you can launder it out to FTX. You can launder it out to Cyprus, to shell companies. You can launder it every which way you can possibly think of. So it's a money laundering operation. That's neoliberalism. That's why they can't compete with Russia and China and these other countries that are growing. They got to try to kneecap them because they're just scammers. Russia, they actually sell stuff. They're like, we got cobalt, we got titanium, we got gold, we got gas. Who wants to buy it? We got wheat. They're selling stuff. You got China, they're making stuff. Some of it, of course, is great stuff. Some of it is common frippery. You know, you go to a dollar store and there's some little thing, plastic thing with a back scratcher. And you're like, what the hell? And it's like, but it's only 99 cents. I think I'll buy it. And you buy a 99-cent back scratcher and you scratch your back a couple times and then a little hand on it. Like it has like a little green plastic can and a stick and you grab it and you're like, I could use that. It's only 99 cents. You don't need a back scratcher. Your back it isn't even itching, but there it is in the dollar store. And hey, think about it. It's only 99 cents. You buy your back scratcher, you scratch it a couple times, the friggin' hand falls off, you forget it. Oh, well, that was a piece of crap. You throw it in the trash can. Who cares? But China just made money because there's idiots like us that will buy back scratchers for 99 cents. So they make a lot of common frippery into the dollar store. I used to have a buddy that owned like a chain of dollar stores. I mean, they were Middle Eastern businessmen, and they had a bunch of dollar stores. I didn't even realize it. And the one guy, their one buddy, had a a big warehouse, and he shipped all this Chinese stuff into the warehouse. This was the guy that dollar stores. You see those dollar stores with all the frippery, all the junk, the little pieces of crap everywhere they're selling. You know, it falls apart 10 seconds after you buy it. He had a warehouse. And people in the dollar stores go to that warehouse and they could like point out the stuff they want. Or, you know, like the little corner stores and the little gas stations and stuff, how they have all kind of silliness in there. He literally had the warehouse. And so he had this gigantic warehouse full of stuff and people would come up front. He shipped it out from the warehouse and they would point out, oh, there's something new. He's like, yeah, we got a new back scratcher. Why, we'll sell you 10 for $1.99 and you can sell them for 99 cents. And the guys with the little corner store say, yeah, I'll take them. Give me a gross of those, or whatever, right? So there's all this stuff, but here's the bottom line. People buy the back scratchers, whether they need them or not, and even if they fall apart. So China's figured out a model. They make some great high-tech, all kinds of stuff, and then they make frippery, back scratchers, and things of that nature, right? It's working for them. You know why? Because the guy that made that back scratcher got up in the morning, went into his back scratcher factory, and at the end of the day, there were back scratchers made, and he went home and went to sleep, and he could feed his family. That's a country there. People making back scratchers. Okay? They figured it out. We can make stuff, and people will get a salary, and they'll feed their families. That's fine with me. If you can find a sucker to buy a piece, something like that, you should make it. And there's suckers to buy anything. So I say all that to say this, but meanwhile, we got neoliberalism. And neoliberalism just looks at Russia and China. And then, of course, what they have to do is they got to convince the dupes and suckers at home that they got to convince you. You see, they can't just say, man, we want to impoverish China again because they're like kind of working hard and doing things and they're doing like better than us, and all we're doing is preying on people because we're friggin' economic vampires. So, and we're preying on you too, Americans, and we're going to take all of your money and spend it on even more war stuff and threaten China. They can't say that. Instead, they got to say, China doesn't. There's something human rights. Taiwan needs independence. They got to come up with a lie because they know that a certain amount of Americans are so damn stupid that no matter what the United States tells them, no matter how many times they lie, cheat, screw us, weapons of mass destruction, babies in the incubators, it doesn't matter how many lies they tell us. There's a certain amount of Americans that when they say, the Russians are coming to get us and they're evil, there's a certain amount of Americans that'll say, you darn right, thank you. When they say those Chinese, I hate, oh, they're terrible. They're doing Chinese things. They're the Chinese Communist Party. There's a certain amount of Americans that'll say, yeah, forget that weapons of mass destruction and babies in the incubator stuff. This time they're telling me the truth. And then there's somebody really smart will tell them. Let me give you an example of some brilliant person that'll come along and put them right. There you go. Soros calls China's Xi Jinping the greatest threat that open societies face today.
Russia-Ukraine border. Republicans don't want the White House.
Okay, so look at this. Fox Business. Soros calls China the greatest threat open societies. So the people in America will say, man, I hate Soros. He's a jerk. He's an idiot. He's a moron. But he's right about China. No, he's not right about China. He ain't looking out for you. He's lying to you. If you hear George Soros, Joe Biden, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Donald Trump, everybody in the elite ruling class agrees. They'll tell you, we hate Soros, but he's right about that. We hate Biden, but we're down with him when it comes to China. When you see everybody in the elite ruling class that play, that pillow fight all the time on Capitol Hill and pretend like they're against each other, if you all see them come together on something, it's a lie. So let's move next. Let's move next to Trump. Trump's out and he's talking again. Let's see what old Trumpy has to say. So Trump was talking at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee, and he said, all right, Trump vowed to eradicate the final vestiges of earlier neoconservative influence inside the Republican Party, singling out establishment figures of the past like Jeb Bush, Karl Rove, and Paul Ryan, saying he would expel the warmongers, drive out the globalists if elected. The Republican Party was ruled by freaks, neocons, open border zealots, and fools. We're never going back. We're never going back to a party that wants to give unlimited money to fight endless wars, but demands we cut veterans benefits. I'm the only candidate who will prevent World War III. So he hates those neocons, and I'm sure he's not thrilled with Soros and all of that kind of stuff. The old Trumpy, yes, sirree, he is a guy who's going to take you in a different direction. Now, Soros calls China's Xi Jinping the greatest threat that open societies face today. Clearly, he is an anti-China guy. Soros is 100% on board. You got to go after China, right? They're terrible. They're horrible. They must be stopped, right? Let's go back to old Trumpy. We will evict Joe Biden from the White House. Look at this. In his speech, China, 11 times he said it. We will evict Joe Biden from the White House. We're never going to be a country ruled by entrenched political dynasties in both parties, rotten special interests. China-loving politicians. You got to hate them China lovers. Nothing worse than a China lover. You know who would love that? George Soros. Let's keep going. He hates them China-loving politicians. The tax incentives were for parents who have babies, also new to his agenda. Punishing China. The former president unequivocally vowed to force China to pay reparations for the spread of COVID. Now, isn't it interesting that an American company called Eco Health Alliance was actually supervising the work, funding the work in Wuhan? So an American company under Fauci called Eco Health Alliance was there, but he's got to punish China. Let's keep going. He also pledged to China-proof the American supply chain, right? Returning to a pre-21st century position of forcing China to earn them each year. I will revoke China's most favorite nation station. most favored nations trade status. I'll have a 4-year plan to phase out Chinese imports of essential goods and gain total independence from China. He hates the WHO, saying it's a tool of China. China, China, China. That's Trump. Let's go back again and let's see something. China, 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 China. Soros calls China's Xi Jinping the greatest threat that open society. You get out of here, Trump. That's all I can say. Trump's one of them. I trust him. So here's the thing. I hate stupid people. I'm allergic to them. I'm allergic to stupid people. There's nothing wrong with, it's not the person, to me, the stupidest person. And I know I'm going to hurt some feelings, but I could care less. If I see you step in a gopher hole and break your ankle, and I look at you and I'm like, that idiot, he walked right over to the stinking gopher hole and he broke his ankle. What a dumb thing to do. I told you, watch out for that gopher hole. But no, right over to the gopher hole, now you got a broken ankle. And then what are you going to do, Garland? I'm going to walk behind you and step in the gopher hole and break my ankle. Why? Because I'm smarter than you are. Because when I step in a gopher hole, it ain't going to break my ankle. So you got all of these Republicans. They're so smart in America that they've figured out that Russiagate is a fraud. They're so wise. They're intelligent. And they can't believe how stupid these Democrats are. Can you believe these guys falling for the Russiagate hoax? How stupid is that? What kind of a moron buys into the Russiagate hoax? And then Biden and Soros and the CIA come out and say, hey, guys, yeah. I know you ain't buying into Russia, right? Wink. How about China? Are you kidding me? China? Now they're the real problems. Now, certainly it was ridiculous and preposterous to say that Trump was a puppet of Russia. That was ridiculous. How absurd was that? And I'm sitting there going, yeah, it was. Now Biden's a puppet for China. I'm like, you're stupider than the person that you laughed at for Russia, because you could see what they did. They didn't have enough sense to see that they were being had with the Russiagate hoax. You watched the Russiagate hoax. You watched the CIA and the mainstream media drag them around like idiots, and you shook your head in derision. Oh my God, can you believe these people buying into the Russiagate hoax? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty stupid, isn't it? And as soon as the exact same people on the media, the same schmucks on the media, they didn't bring different people on. They brought the same people on. Joe Biden, Bill Kristol, the same people that did weapons of mass destruction, the same people that did Russiagate. And now those exact same people say, there's a new game in town, guys. What is it? It's China. And you got a bunch of people who are like, yeah, I saw weapons of mass destruction. That was absurd. Russiagate, how preposterous is that? Now, the same people now say, hey, China's an evil dirtbag. Yeah, well, I think you guys finally came around to reality now. You really, all the rest of the things you told us were lies. But this time, I think the CIA's turned over a new leaf. I think they've really figured out that China's the bad guy. And they asked, the Grease Man years ago had a book out, and I always remember the name of that book. And they asked me why I drink. And I don't even drink, but I'm about to start with some of the people. I've got people like on my Twitter page, Twitter followers, Twitter, whatever, friends. And they're like, oh, yeah, man. Oh, man, that Russiagate stuff. You be like, you read the latest Taibbi stuff? Can you believe those idiots? Oh, yeah. And then it's like, yeah. And then I'm like, they're doing the same thing with China. Oh, time out there, buddy. Time out. These people may have been lying, filthy, cheating scumbags, and they may have lied about everything. But now I think they've turned over a new leaf and they're telling the truth about China. You just got to shake your head and you say, and you wonder why this country's going straight to hell. Because we got crazy people, insane maniacs running it. And we got people who, if the CIA told them, woke up tomorrow and said, The Greenlanders, they're the guy. The leader of Greenland is you're not going to believe this. Would you believe he's a dictator? They go, yeah, a dictator. Well, he's a dictator. Yeah, he's a dictator. And we got to sanction him because they just found a lot of oil. I mean, because he's treating his people bad. And then like a week later, you'd find out they just discovered the largest oil reserves in history in Greenland. And you wouldn't put those two things together. Americans wouldn't go, dictator. Greenland was our friend last week. They discovered oil, and now we got to save their people with sanctions. And wait a minute, I haven't heard. No, no, not in America. Not in America. In America, there's a certain element here that would simply say, "Oh, the latest boogeyman is Greenland. Yeah, you got me. Point me in the direction of Greenland." And like if there was some food that we had that was Greenlandic food or something, whatever the hell that is, there was like a Greenland restaurant, they'd like throw red paint on the front of the restaurant and say, "Bloody killers, you Greenland people. You're beating up puppy seals." It would be the killing puppy seals thing or something. And they buy it. Americans are suckers, man. We are just waiting. And meanwhile, they would say, well, these Greenland's a problem. I think we're going to have to do another 250 billion in the military budget. It's the only way we can protect ourselves from those glacier having bastards. And Americans would be like, yeah, we got to protect ourselves from Greenland. I mean, I don't know what kind of weapons they got, but I'm sure it has something to do with ice. I don't know. Maybe they just sharpen an ice cycle and stab you with it or something. That's all it would take in America. Russia, China, Iran. Something else I've noticed? I got to say this. Yeah, I've noticed this. The countries we hate worst oftentimes are the ones that like their governments the most. I've looked and researched. If you look at China, do you know in China the actual support for their government is up over 90%, which would make sense. I mean, let's face it, China was poorer than Haiti, and now it ain't. And if people are like really poor and then they're not poor anymore, they're gonna kind of like that. So they got high numbers. Putin, like 80% approval rating. I mean, no Western leader could dream of the approval rating that he has. But he's an evil dictator that his people must be protected from him. I've been to Venezuela. They told me that Maduro's an evil dictator. He's horrible. Oh, he's terrible. And then I traveled around Venezuela and I talked to the people and I found out that they kind of like him and that his party wins in a blowout every time. And I'm like, that's weird. I thought he was an evil dictator. And I've noticed something. The more the people in a country like their leaders or their government, the more the U.S. hates their leaders or their government. Why is that? I think I've figured out why. Because, very specifically, what the U.S. hates the most is a strong central government. You see, a strong central government oftentimes kind of takes into account the needs of the people. The United States does not want a government that takes into account the needs of the people. For instance, the country may sell oil or gas, like Russia. And the country leadership may say, you know what, rather than just letting the Exxon and Shell and BP come in and sell the oil and gas and keep the money, I think we'll just sell it ourselves. And we'll keep the money and we'll use it to fund our government and we won't have to tax the people to bloody hell. And like Russia comes up with Gazprom and things of that nature, Rosneft. And they sell their own stuff and they keep their own money and the taxes ain't real high. And the people are happy with that. And they build things and they build new airports and they build new Moscow subways and things. And the people like that. And now what do? You have a strong central government. The U.S. don't want a strong central government. Well, I'll put as an example, all you got to do is look at our allies. Germany. Is there a strong central government there? No, because if the United States says to any of the leaders of any countries in Europe, I want you to walk over to that pole and I want you to slam your head into that pole until you die. You know what the leaders will say? Well, sure, we'll do that, but we'll be okay if we just take one of our innocent citizens and do it first. And you have to say, sure. And a leader would go over and grab any one of the citizens from their country, some poor schlep walking down the street, by the back of the head, and bang his head into that pole till he's dead. Because one thing the ruling elite in Europe likes to do, they like to sacrifice their people. So not only do the European countries not have a strong central government, they don't even have a central government. And somebody else brings up Augusto Pinochet. Good point. The United States says they hate dictators. But when we find a country with a strong central government, we overthrow the government and install a dictator. History tells us that we like dictators. We love dictators, so much so that we install dictators. Dictators are real easy to deal with. And oftentimes, if the US, they're easy to control. Well, all right. I think that's enough for one night. We're going to look and see. Oh, we're going through the super chats. We're going through the super chats. All right, let's go. Romel Murdoch, Chris Rock in Baltimore telling inconvenient truth, and so are you. Yeah, I got to check him out. I heard he's pushing back on the woke crap. Oh, by the way, I'll wait till I get finished to tell you about Cocaine Bear. Spelled Sir wrong, Mr. Nixon. Spelled Sir wrong? Where did I spell Sir wrong? Okay. All right. Okay. The part everybody's leaving out. U.S. did promise to every Ukrainian they will receive a check for $1 million when they defeat Russia. Yeah, they ain't getting that money. And you know what? As Clint Eastwood said, and the outlaw Josie Wales, dying ain't no way to make a living. Garland, keep an eye on the threats against Argentina, El Salvador, and Mexico. U.S. is getting more aggressive every day. Oh, anybody who says won't do what they want is in trouble. Denazify Ukraine in Congress. That's funny. Sparky says, are you insinuating white man's burden, condescending talk down to school of diplomacy isn't working? Guess Blinken and Macron didn't get the memo. Let's keep going. Good old the Sparkster always has plenty to say. Oh, looks like Sparky again. A doctor unnecessarily removed Ronald Reagan's character's legs in the 40s movie King's Row, so his daughter would no longer be interested in him. Where's the rest of me? It was Reagan's famous quote. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's something our government would do. Sparky again says, I remember the late 90s. Plenty of American businessmen went to China, to arrange moving their industry there in the late 90s. China didn't come and take it. Oh, absolutely. They went over there. They took our jobs over there because China opened up to cheap labor, and they went over there for cheap labor. And China was successful, and now they're mad at China. Oh, no. We helped to make you successful. Our greed. Joseph says, can the U.S. maintain its military bases around the world without dollar dominance? Absolutely. That's what Russia and China are doing. One of the things that the countries that are out here are doing, one of the ways they're pushing back is to come up with alternative economic systems to end dollar dominance. End the dollar dominance, you end the U.S. empire. Putin is an anti-globalist hero. I would argue he is anti-globalist. It's up to you whether you decide he's a hero, but there's no question he's anti-globalist. No talk of the increase of attacking of U.S. infrastructure, especially energy. Increase of hey, there's Kinky. Kinky says we love Sparky. Yay, Kinky. Let me see something. I was trying to see. I was trying to make Kinky a moderator, and I clicked on this thing and on the dots, hoping, and it just said my only options for Kinky are put user in timeout or block this user. I don't want to do either one of those to Kinky. All right, how about we go to Damas? Please invite Vanessa Bailey and talk about Syria. Yeah, Vanessa's great. I've talked to her many times before. Hey, there's Reckless Abandon. Let's see what Reckless Abandon has to say. Red Chili Pepper, but definitely not the first leader overthrown by the CIA. You have lots of them. Good old Reckless Abandon. All right, let's go. Let's look. Oh, nothing happening over there on... Nothing happening there over there on Rockfin. That's okay. I appreciate everybody coming on Rockfin. All right, Kinky. All right, you all. Thanks a lot, everybody. Somebody said Kinky's already mad. I hope not. I hope Kinky's not mad. Refi00 says, will you and Doctor start taking Cal? Taking Cal on the critical hour. I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Taking Cal, C-A-L? I don't know. You got to help me out there. Refi, I don't know what taking Cal. Anybody else? Calls. Oh, taking calls on the critical hour. No, we can't. Yeah, I got smart people smarter than me. Taking calls. No, we can't because the show comes on every day from 6 to 8 p.m. and I actually record it. We record it. It's pre-recorded from 1 to 3:40. So we actually do this. We start recording at 1. I record at 1, 1:20, 1:40. 220, 240, 320. So every 20 minutes, and we have 5 in between to give us time to get guests on and off. But so it's pre-recorded. So unfortunately, because mine's 6 to 8 in the evening, and to be quite frank, I ain't thrilled about working 6 to 8 in the evening every day. You know, who wants to work 6 to 8 in the evening in the summertime? Not I, my friend. Not I. Bushwriter says, thanks for another great session. Who's taking out the British preems, America or King Charles? Oh, okay. Russia's 300 billion is lost somewhere. That was a warning to the world. I would say this. Apparently now they're saying they can only find 30 billion. I don't think it was ever 300 billion. I don't believe it was ever that. All right. I think that's it for everybody. And thanks everybody over on Rockfin. And by the way, oh, you know what? Something else is interesting. Let me show you this. You want to see something interesting? Before I leave, one more thingy. Watch this. RFK Jr. says he's thinking about challenging Biden in the 2024 Democratic presidential primary. The son of RFK, he's considering challenging Biden. I'm thinking about it. Yes, Kennedy told the crowd in New Hampshire on Friday, according to reports from Fox News. I passed the biggest hurdle that my wife green-lighted it. Kennedy reportedly made the remark. He's the son of RFK, environmental lawyer, self-described lifelong Democrat. He was a vocal critic of the COVID-19 vaccine. So isn't that interesting? Oh, RFK, you know, first of all, I'll say this, just the name alone, you know what I mean? I mean, before we go any further, I mean, as soon as he said RFK, I'm like, oh, I gotta think about voting for this guy. But you know, I've interviewed him. Very nice guy, very reasonable, smart guy. I like RFK. I think that you know, he has that, what is it called? He has this vocal cord. You ever heard him talk? He has a problem. It's called spasmodic dysphonia, I believe, where it has to do with the spasms in your voice box, and it causes him to have trouble. It's a broken speech. And you know, that could be, I think that could affect him, but he's a brilliant guy. And you know, hey man, I'd love to see more names in that. Come on, Biden's, you know, have you seen this guy lately? I don't think Biden's going to be able to run in 2024 because it's got to the point he can't get off a stage. I saw another one today. He's after the stage, he like goes to wander in one direction and some guy like corrals him back in the right direction to get off the stage. This dude, I don't know how he runs. And Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, really. So let's see what happens. I think Tulsi Gabbard runs. I don't know if she's running as a Republican. I don't know if she's running as an independent, but I think Tulsi Gabbard runs. Gabbard RFK. There you go. I don't know, but I think it's going to be interesting if RFK runs. Like I said, he has that spasmodic dysphonia that really, you know, I'll put it like that. I don't know how much that hurts him, but the thing I will say is this: people will see him as a one-issue person. All they'll talk about all the time is COVID, 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 vaccine, vaccine, vaccine. So I think what he would have to do is he would really have to push to get out from under that, you know, because they'll make you a one-issue person. He has to push on foreign policy. He has to push on infrastructure, on rebuilding America, and some of the things that he'd like to do, and push back against the neocons. So. And the globalists. So I'd love to see RFK in there. I'd love to see good old RFK, man. You know, like bring back the old times. You know what I mean? Too bad there's JFK Jr. Unfortunately, he, you know, I don't know if you remember, he died in a plane crash a while back. But yeah, that'd have been great. RFK, JFK Jr. Somebody like that, back in the saddle. All right, thanks a lot. Did I miss any super chats? I don't think I did. So I'll end up by saying this, guys, as usual, and girls. I know what. I meant to say something else. Got another minute or two. I gotta see Chris Rock. I don't know what he said. I imagine there's some people here that saw it, but it sounds like he's pushing back against the woke stuff, and that needs to be a discussion we need to have. I went to see a movie the other day called Cocaine Bear, and one of the things I liked about it, I have been very, very critical of the kinds of movies that come out. Everything's the woke movie now. Everything's the same movie, right? And I've been critical of movies coming out of Hollywood. And this was an old school movie with a bear that, basically some drug dealers left some cocaine dropped in the forest, and the bear eat it and freaked out and tore people up and did all kind of crazy stuff. But it was a comedy and it was hilarious. And the great thing about that movie was the people in it were complex characters. See, these new woke movies, they're so concerned that they got check all the right boxes. Do we have a white person, a black person, a gay person, a gay woman, a gay man? Do we have a gay couple? Do we have a Muslim person? Do we have a Latino guy? Do we have, and then there's like 4 kids, and every one of them's black, white, Latino, Muslim. They do all of that. They focus so much on that stuff that they don't get into the complexity of the characters. And they don't put the effort into making it a good movie. And they check off. They basically turn Kamala Harris into a movie. Right, checks off all the boxes, but there's nothing underneath of it. The issue of competence of a good movie is not there. Cocaine Bear was hilarious. It was old school, silly B horror movie funny, and that's good, man. I would recommend Cocaine Bear's a hilarious movie. If you like old school B movie kind of stupid comedy, you'll like Cocaine Bear. All right, thanks a lot. Anything else? Did I miss anyone? All right, I'm gonna have to start setting esoteric teachings. Biden is more concerned with his money laundering operation in Ukraine than the daily train derailments or anything. Exactly, that's neoliberalism. It's a self-serving racket. You're 100. All right, I like your hat. Do you sell such hats? People are starting to tell me I got to sell merch, and I've had people ask me for the Nixon 2024 hat. I've had people ask me for the Biden bomb Nord Stream hat. So I got to figure out a way to do some merch. I guess I got to do merch, huh? So that'll be fun. These are fun stuff. I don't know about the Nixon 2024 hat. I don't know if anybody ever bought who'd buy that. Oh, by the way, I'll end it by saying this. Thanks a lot, everyone. And of course, follow me on Telegram, follow me on Twitter, all that kind of stuff. If you can afford patreon.com/Garland Nixon. If you can afford Patreon, that's great. 5, 10, 100 a month, whatever you can do is thank you. PayPal, of course, is there. A lot of people choose buymeacoffee.com. That's always great. /Garland NH. I got my Cash App info there. If you get anything you can do to help the channel, is great. And don't forget, like, smash the like button and go to Rockfin. Become a member on Rockfin, because if they throw me off of YouTube, you can be a Rockfin member and it costs nothing and there's no advertisements. Rockfin is great and it is a free speech platform, so I don't get censored on Rockfin. So please become a member at Rockfin. Rockfin, the way Rockfin stays on the air, if you can afford it, it's $14.99 a month to become a subscriber, and they will give you a couple of months free if you sign up for a year. If you can afford to become a subscriber on Rockfin, I certainly appreciate that. Subscribe through my channel. It helps keep my channel strong, and it helps keep Rockfin on the air. But you don't have to. The one thing you get from being a subscriber is every Wednesday from 9 to 10 a.m. I do a subscribers only show with Scott Ritter, and that's for subscribers. So if you can afford to become a subscriber on Rockfin and keep us on the air, help keep us on the air as a free speech platform, I appreciate it. If you can't, just keep your money to yourself and your family and sign up for Rockfin anyway. It doesn't cost much, and you'll see all of this other stuff. Everything's on there. And even if it gets censored on here, I've had a couple of videos that actually got censored on YouTube, but they're still up on Rockfin. Thanks a lot, everybody. Hey, look, if you can't, Dusky says he can't. That's okay. This is for only people who can. If you can't, just go over there and just sign up for free and check out all my stuff. Thanks a lot. Peace. I'm out.